Good morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church in Amherst, New York, a little suburb of, well, it's a big suburb of Buffalo, New York, in western New York here. I welcome you on this snowy 23rd of January, 2022. We're really hoping, we were so hoping to be out of the pandemic by now. But the reason that this is being recorded and put up on the YouTube and internet is because we're not out of the woods yet. In fact, we're still in the thick of the woods, although in some places the number of infections and deaths are dropping, especially in the northeast of the United States. In the south and the west, it's actually on the rise still. Just saw yesterday that the west is up about 15% or so. Not a good thing. But I live in the northeast where it's dropping, so that's a good thing. Yeah, so something good. Well, today is a cold, very cold day. We've had single digits for 2 or 3 days now. And we've had a bunch of snow, although it's kind of collapsed in on itself now. It's only maybe about a foot deep out there. Most places had around 2 foot a week ago. But it's all just kind of melted, dropped down. Yeah, now it's as hard as styrofoam. So, well, that's, and the sky right now is just simply light gray. You couldn't even tell where the sun is. No, if you stand outside, you couldn't point toward it. No idea. It's that kind of gray. Well, okay. So much for all those things. We're up to the third Sunday of Epiphany, the Epiphany cycle of the church here. We have Advent, followed by the Christmas and Epiphany cycle. All right. The idea of Epiphany is the revealing, making known. It's a Greek word, really. To reveal something that was covered. And that's the idea. Jesus is pointing out through actions and words who he is and why he's here. The text appointed for this third Sunday in Epiphany is from Matthew, the 8th chapter, verses 1 to 13. So let's start off by reading that. When he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him, and behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, See thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded, for a testimony unto them. And when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou should come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say unto this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said unto him that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great a faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto that, many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into utter darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in that selfsame hour. Again, that's Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 to 13. We want to look particularly this afternoon in this 8th chapter of Matthew, verse 8. That's Matthew chapter 8, verse 8. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldst come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. The Greek for that little bit there, but speak the word only. Allah monon epe logo. It's and that's the Greek for that that the centurion spoke, and it's a brilliant little phrase because it begins with Allah, which in Greek is it means no instead or but rather than. So but rather than or instead of coming with me and going under my roof, coming to my house, instead monon from monos to only or singly, epe logo, speak the word, not speak a paragraph or hundreds of words, but just speak a word, and that'll do it. You see, this centurion understood something mind-bending, something, you can call it faith if you want to, but faith just means to be convinced of something. The pisteio in the Greek comes from peitho, to be convinced. To believe comes from the word to be convinced. To be convinced of what is the point? To believe what is the point? What is it that this centurion, this Roman officer, understood? Well, firstly, a Roman centurion, I don't know if you have an image in your mind of what these people looked like, but to begin with, this was a man who would be very tall, a man who was probably 6.5 feet tall, who was at the pinnacle of his military career. He would be incredibly strong, incredibly brave, battle-hardened over many, many battles. A centurion would start out with maybe 80 men or so, and then it would, over time, build up to at least 100 men. And the centurion would have 50 men on his left side and 50 on his right side, and he would be in the center of this line. But it wasn't a perfect line. It would angle back, feather back from his left to his left and to his right. And he and the other center point of the line would form the breach, would break the enemy. His armor was polished to a high gloss, a very durable type of metal, practically what we might call steel, although not a true steel. And the helmet on his head had feathers, which would stand up another foot or two above the height of the man. So all in all, you would have something that would be standing at least 8 feet tall, gleaming in the sun, with tassels and body armor that would allow him to, with a buckler on his arm and a shield that is fastened to his arm that you couldn't unfasten. It would be fastened to the forearm very stoutly. And in the right hand, you would find a medium sword, not a short sword, because, again, this is someone who's going to create the breach, the break in the enemy line. And he and the person next to him were incredibly powerful soldiers. Now, the Romans also had another type of battle arrangement, the phalanx, where they would have taller shields and longer spears. But typically, in battle, they would march forward in that V formation, or roughly a V, and just crush the enemy line. That's why the Romans were essentially unstoppable. So this man was used to the enemy crumbling before him. He was not used to seeing defeat. Instead, the enemy would come, they'd put their bravest and their toughest in front of the centurion to try to intimidate the centurion, but the centurion was not a person who could be intimidated. They only knew the idea of forward. They only knew the idea of commands and orders, and they were not ever going to be dissuaded. Their level of courage was monumental. And the idea, even the concept of defeat, was not in their vocabulary. So, they had a word for it, but it wasn't in their heart. So this is the type of person, a leader among men, not a ruler, but a leader. Rulers sit at comfortable tables, drink wine, and have servants. centurion is a man of risk and action who puts himself dead center in the face of risk and death, and then charges with his men forward in a formation that is truly unstoppable. So, this is the man who came before Jesus, who was facing an obstacle that he could not confront. Everything else in life would fall before him. But he had a disease, the servant did. And the thing about centurions is that they loved their men, and their men loved them. That was the basis of the trust and the camaraderie that existed in the ranks of the Roman army. They knew at the end of the day that the centurion would lead them, and at the end of the day they would be coming home to their families because they weren't the one on the losing side. And except this time, the centurion found himself facing an enemy that was he was losing. He was completely unable to do anything. His buckler, his shield, his glistening armor, standing 8 feet tall, with the feathers on top of the helmet. There was nothing about his strength or authority or anything that could heal his servant. And the doctors, you can be sure that the Roman doctors had given it their best shot, because the centurion's doctors were the very best. These were doctors who are basically army surgeons. And any army surgeon who has worked in like in Afghanistan or a fighting field where men are injured and wounded deals with the most critical types of injuries and deals with solutions that are off the cuff and just produced on the field, invented, if you will. And yet they had looked at this servant and shook their heads. We can't help you. We can't help the servant. So now the centurion was faced with a problem. He was about to lose a person he loved, and there wasn't a thing he could do about it. But he had heard that among the Jews that there was the claim that the Mashiach, the Christos, had come. You see, in the Jewish scriptures, Mashiach, or Christos, if you were reading the Hebrew or the Greek version of the Septuagint of the Hebrew scriptures, but Christians would call, or the modern day sometimes called the Old Testament. The Jews would refer to as the Tanakh, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, the writings, the prophets, and the law, the prophets, and the writings. The Torah, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, Torah, the law. So anyways, this man was acquainted with these scriptures, probably in the Septuagint version, the Greek, because he speaks Greek, as the text here. Allah, monon, epe, logo, is a sentence fragment here in the Greek. But rather, instead, all you need to do is speak the word. And so he must have read the Hebrew script, the Old Testament scriptures, the promise from God that the Savior would come, who would heal the sick, who would bring hope and life, who would preach the forgiveness of sins, and who would have the authority of God as man, but yet the authority of God, true God and true man. And so he sought out Jesus, leaving his servant's side. You can only imagine that a man of this caliber, who had a servant whom he loved, and leaves the servant's side even as the servant is dying, has a great conviction, has been convinced of something unique. Because rather than stay by his servant's side as he lays dying, he leaves his servant's side and instead goes and seeks out this person that he's not met before. People have to point him out to him, this Jewish man and he's not an elderly rabbi. He's not one who has recognized a claim or who is surrounded in Jerusalem by the elders of the people. Instead, he's been rejected by the elders of the people. He's known to be rather rogue. He doesn't have letters of approval from the rabbis or the Sanhedrin. Instead, he's simply teaching and healing and preaching. And so this centurion embraces an idea that if this man is the Messiah, if this man is the Christos, because Christos is Greek for Messiah, it simply means the one sent, the messenger. If this is the Son of God, if he has this authority over life and death, then as one with authority, he doesn't need to do the work himself. All he needs to do is speak, give the order, as the centurion himself routinely did. And so he approached Jesus. Now, today people might think, if we were hanging out with Jesus, it'd be so cool because we could have him come and do this and do that. This man had Jesus in front of him and did the opposite. You see, this is the nature of conviction or faith. That instead of trusting one's eyes, we trust one's ears. And so that's what the centurion did. And he said, "No, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof, but instead, Allah, monon, simply, only, epe logo, speak the word." And Jesus looked at this and said, "Yeah, you have it. Go. Your conviction, your trust has gotten you what you've sought." You see, we live in a time where people are saying the craziest things. We live in a time where truth is at a minimum. Even people who should know what the truth is. I mean, leaders of a country, you would think that people who sit in a Senate or a House of Representatives or a president or any of these type of leaders would be able to know what the truth is. If you ask them, is it daytime? They should be able to say, yes, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, it's daytime. Instead, a lot of them obviously don't know true from lies. That a lot of them are saying, you don't need a vaccine in the time of a plague. Obviously, a vaccine is a wonderful thing. Billions of people have taken these vaccines and been protected by them, as we have for 200 years since the days of Napoleon. If you want to read more about it, go online and read about the history, 200-year plus history of vaccines. Obviously, they work. Every school child knows this because every school child has to have them to go to school. But we live in a day and time where even adults have become voluntarily so stupid. For whatever reason, I suspect it's money, but I'm not sure. I don't think anyone would be voluntarily that ignorant. But you find it today. But you see, that's not new to today, is it? That's the thing that's always been around. Even in the day of the centurion, there were people who were either superstitious or lying for money. And that's not new in this world. But this man, the centurion, could see through what was not and what is true. And he rested his servant's life on a truth, that Jesus is the Son of God, that Jesus has this authority. Otherwise, his trip was wasted and his servant would be dead before he got home. But when he got home, he found his servant well. And as the text says, the servant was healed in that self-same hour. And so his conviction, his faith, or this truth saved his servant. Something that he was already convinced of. He knew. And so that's the same again today as well. Even though truth is for sale, so to speak, because it clearly is in this country right now. Truth is for sale. And it's funny, you don't find poor people lying about much. Their truth is simple. They're poor, they're hungry. It's people with money who seem to be lying backwards and forwards today. But knowing what is true, and what is still true, is that Jesus is the Son of God. He laid down his life for the sin of the world, and those who look to him will find that good thing that they are seeking, the forgiveness of sins, our relationship with God that is not fractured or stained, but that rather where the Father looks at each human being and says, I've given my Son's life for you. You're forgiven. Arise, come with me, live with me in my home forever. You see, that is the truth. That is the gospel. That is the truth that is in Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And that is the freedom that the simple conviction, or patho, or pistoio, faith, if you will, or believing or trusting that something is a conviction that God would be so kind to sinners to free them from their guilt and sin without anything on our part, not a single thing. But he would do this out of his own kindness. And that's what the centurion trusted. He offered Jesus nothing. In fact, he didn't even want him to come under his roof, just asked him, pleaded with him to say the word, give the order. He knew it would happen. Are your sins forgiven? Of course they are. They already are. When? Not when you first believed, not when you were even born. 2,000 years ago when Jesus died on the cross. And actually much longer before that, when God the Father decided that he would do this kind thing for all the world. That's when you were forgiven. That's when all people were forgiven. Those who don't believe? Sure. Those who end up in hell? Sure. Everyone's forgiven. Faith is just to personally trust this conviction that it is true for you. That's what that is. It doesn't make it more true or less true. It simply holds on to that truth like a hand that grabs a rope for a person who's drowning and is brought to freedom and life. That's what this is. And faith is nothing but this hand that holds on to this and embraces it. And even that is the work of God to give us such a trust and a faith. So, anyways, this has been retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church. Welcome you to this third week of Epiphany, although it's cold, bitter cold here in the northeast of the United States, in Buffalo area. We have had a bunch of snow, it's gray, wind is blowing. We're in the middle of, we thought we were near the end of the pandemic, but unfortunately it rages on. And if you haven't been vaccinated, if you're one of the tens of millions in the United States where the vaccine is at any pharmacy for free, please go get your shot. There's a truth right there. It's a vaccine. If you don't know what that is, just look it up. Either go to the library or go online and just type in the word vaccine, and you'll find the CDC, Center for Disease Control, and they'll tell you what this means. Or ask your doctor. Your doctor can tell you what a vaccine is, and go get your shot. For heaven's sakes, stop listening to lies and people who lie, principally for money, because poor people have no point for lying. I mean, that would be just the height of ignorance to lie about death. I think only people who have some sort of hidden agenda would lie about something as simple as a vaccine. I cannot imagine any other reason. I don't honestly believe that anyone who's gone to public school or any school could possibly be that stupid after reading about how Napoleon and a British doctor worked together to heal troops and people. And this is a life-saving measure. So, there's the truth of the gospel, and there's the truth of vaccines, and please, get your shot. And if you're looking for hope from God, there's the gospel. Okay, well, again, this is retired Pastor Karl. Hope your day is not freezing cold. Don't stay out in the temperatures below freezing for long. You'll be injured. And go get your shot. It'll protect you to a reasonable degree. You might still get sick, but at least it should protect you from death and severe hospitalization. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.